I think we've been lied to, or at least misled, the majority of our lives, being told things like magic isn't real, and dragons don't exist, and there's no such thing as monsters. Well, what is magic other than misunderstood science? And what is that dragon if you take away that misunderstood science? Perhaps a dinosaur? And what is a monster if not just an animal that we have yet to discover? You see, there's a little gray area between history and folklore. And in that gray area, we are tasked with dividing the fact from the fiction and the logical from the illogical. So let's take Thunderbirds, for example. But how about more specifically, the Tlanuwa from Cherokee stories? So the Cherokee believed in this huge bird known as the Tlanuwa. And this bird was copper-cladded, meaning that its feathers were plated with copper. They were impenetrable to the people at the time. So bows and arrows and spears, none of them were able to pierce the hide of the Tlanuwa. To the people at the time, this was a very real creature. This was not just a story. So as for the scope of this creature, the size of this animal, it supposedly had about a 20-foot wingspan. It was so large that it would carry away children and pets from the Cherokee. In fact, later on there's a story that I'm going to tell you about what the Cherokee did and how they reacted to get the Tlanuwa to leave them alone. But real quick, in that regard to that little gray area between history and folklore, was there really a copper-cladded Thunderbird in Cherokee Nation? Now, most likely it was not copper-cladded the way that it's attributed to be. However, there probably was a giant bird harassing the people at the time. And you may find it hard to believe, but there was even an attack on a boy in the 70s. In 1977, a boy was playing in his backyard while his mother was cleaning inside. She was keeping an eye on him through the window. Suddenly, two giant birds swoop down out of the air and start attacking this boy. One of them actually latches onto the boy and starts to try to carry him away. He's picked up about 1 foot out of the air and carried about 30 feet before his mother runs out and comes to his rescue. She's fighting off these birds with her bare hands until they finally let go, and they run back inside, forever scarred by the time that her son was almost taken away, most likely to be eaten by the Lawndale Thunderbirds. And what makes this even more unique is that there were witnesses. Onlookers had seen the birds and all said that they had a white ring around their neck with about an 8-foot wingspan. Now, aside from this white ring, they were said to be all black from head to tail. But how does this coincide with the Tlanuwa and whether or not it's an actual animal? The Argentavis magnificens, the bird with a 20-foot wingspan. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about why I don't believe in radiometric dating, but I'm just letting you know from my point of view and my opinion, the equation for radiometric dating is more of an assumption than a scientific fact. And because of that, I don't believe we know the age of the Earth up to 10,000 years. And if we really don't know how old a stone is or a fossil is, there's no telling how long ago these giant birds lived. And keeping that in mind, it's quite possible these giant birds, the Argentavis magnificens, was the race of birds that was attacking this Cherokee tribe. But the question remains, how did the Cherokee get rid of the Tlanuwa? Well, once I tell you, maybe we'll have a little bit of insight as to why we don't see these massive birds anymore. But first, you know where we gotta go. Stories are just stories if they're told in a setting like this, and I'm not into that. This story goes back probably about 500-600 years. And it starts out with a small Cherokee village filled with men, women, and children, and pets even. The problem comes when the Tlanuwa saw these kids and saw their pets and decided to make a meal of them. What they would do is these giant copper-cladded birds would swoop down, pick up their children, pick up their dogs, bring them back to their cave, and they would be their food. Eventually the Cherokee got tired of this, and they decided to go to a medicine man. Now, for Cherokee, a medicine man is kind of like shaman. So they go to this guy, and they say that they're having this problem. He says, okay, bring me this specific type of bark from this tree. So they go out, bring him the bark, come back, and he makes this rope. Then he takes them, walks off with his walking cane and his rope, and he says, okay, let's go to the cave. As they get to the cave, they realize the top of it is overhanging the entrance. So they have to toss the rope over and swing inside in order to make it to their cave. And that's exactly what the Cherokee shaman did. Sorry, Cherokee medicine man. So he swings himself into the cave and hooks onto a bush so that way he can pull himself in. Once he gets there, he realizes that the Tlanuwa, they're not there. But what is there are 4 Thunderbird chicks. And he starts pushing them towards the edge. As they're falling over one after another, the Tlanuwa, the horned serpent of Cherokee folklore, jumps up and swallows them one after another. So after this Cherokee medicine man dumps all the Thunderbird chicks, or the Tlanuwa chicks, into the river, he looks off in the distance and he sees these 2 elder Tlanuwas coming back. So he scrambles out of there, he gets up onto his rope and climbs out of that cave. And by the time they get back, they have no idea that this man had just killed their younglings. So they're looking around for the culprit, trying to figure out what happened to their chicks. And they look down at the river and they see the horned serpent with a full belly. So assuming that this was the culprit, they dive down, pull up the Tlanuwa, bring him into the sky, and rip him piece by piece until there's nothing left but the Ujali stone. Now, if you don't know what the Ujali stone is, it's this gemstone that sits on top of the Tlanuwa's head. And supposedly, people are still looking for it to this day. Now, after the Tlanuwa was killed, the Thunderbirds flew off into the distance, never to be seen again. Now, if you're a little confused about what the Tlanuwa is, the horned serpent, there's actually a video I'm going to link to you right now so that way you can go check that out. And thanks for watching.